Death, rebirth, and resurrection. That is the sole purpose as to why we are here, lifetime after lifetime, to gain mastery upon this very function, process, way of being, because it is the law of the universe, death, rebirth, and resurrection. That is what we're here to master. So this video is actually going to kind of bounce around all the four corners with this, because right now, and the reason I'm bringing this video forward is because yesterday I shared a video on the karmic moon, the full moon in Capricorn. It's a karmic moon, and we're very much in this massive death process. And for many of us, including me, it is intense. It's been really, really hard. Yesterday was a very, very intense day for me. And many of us, because I've been speaking to quite a few of you, and we're all in the same boat where we're like, whew, we want to let go, but we really are at the base matter of what our core wounding is, not just for this lifetime, lifetimes. And it's also got a big backlog of ancestral energy behind it as well, which is why it's so flippin' intense. But now today I feel like my balloons popped a little bit and I feel an expansion of energy. So I feel a bit better with sharing today, but I just wanted to break down Gospel of Marie, how I see all of this, right? Death, rebirth, and resurrection. So death is when we let go, right? So death is when we go, okay, so call it surrender. So let's break it down. That's what happens. We surrender, we go, okay, fine. And we just let it go, right? And then we go into the rebirth. So that also brings a lot of fear, because when rebirth comes along, that means that you're willing to go into the darkness. You're willing to go back into the womb, which is where we all came from. We have a cosmic womb, which is like, multiverse and beyond. Women, we have our own wombs. We all came from a womb. Do you know what I mean? And that is like a very, very dark place. Dark can ignite fear and lack of safety. But in truth, darkness is where we came from. And that's our most sacred, safe security space we've ever had, surrounding beautiful waters in our mother's womb, safe, held, all of the things before we were birthed into this crazy life and incarnation. I mean, let's just stay there. But you see what I'm saying? So this is the rebirth. We go back into the womb. So going back into the womb means going to the underworld. Going back into the womb means going back into the water. And for some of us, most of us, we're kind of like, freaks us out a little bit, right? But then after that process, once we've got right with that, we faced our shadow in the dark and realized actually the shadow in the darkness is actually quite comforting. This is actually quite nice. You're not the big bad boogeyman that I thought you were. This is kind of okay. That's where we get okay with that situation. And then we get reborn again and we come out the other side and we resurrect. Now let's break that down to a normal everyday. Let's talk real term energy, right? So we all have these days right now when we're actually feeling amazing and we're like, oh my God, everything's okay. Today's a good energy day. And then all of a sudden the next day, the wind changes and you're like literally like, oh my God, I can't breathe. My anxiety's high. It's just impending doom. And you're just like, I just don't want to be here. I just, okay, we've all been going through that, if not still in it now. So it's almost like you're robbed of these bliss days where you're just like, yay. And then you're like, no. Do you know what I mean? So it's like when that comes in, that's kind of like, that's in a way a death coming in. So when we go into that, oh, this doesn't feel very nice, we are encouraged to surrender into that, but we don't, we resist it, which is why we end up being extremely tired, having headaches, feeling unwell, all of the things. And then eventually we bust through because this too shall pass, right? So when we've been in that horrible energy funk, all of a sudden you wake up the next day, something's shifted, you feel better. Ooh, okay, that's good. Okay. And then you have some good days again, only probably to go nosedive into the darkness again. So you see what I'm saying? I've kind of described the last 4 days. That is, essentially is the death, rebirth, and resurrection. So we go through our darkness and our shadow. Something's coming in, something's coming up, something you've got to face, doesn't feel nice. All of a sudden we process that shadow, we unlock it and we soul retrieve that part, which was the shadow. We bring it back home and then that's when the lights come back on, right? So that's kind of like the death, rebirth, resurrection process. But we kind of do it in a way where we're just fumbling along and just being spat out the other end. And we're like, thank God that's over. But now what's happening as we gain mastery over this process, we're more aware when this energy blows in. So yes, we still feel shit. Yes, we still want to leave the planet. And yes, we still feel impending doom. But we've stepped back a few steps. We've zoomed out and we've gone, okay, I'm now starting to understand that I'm more of a master than I was a year ago and the year before that. I got something going on here. So I'm not going to believe the hype, and I'm going to step back and have a little bit of a zoom out perspective on this and just see what I can observe and how I can be more accepting of the situation and expand my space to allow it to be what it needs to be, because this too shall pass, because we know it always does. So our wisdom is more stronger than it's ever been. Our trust is a little bit stronger than it was before. Do you know what I'm saying? So are we failing? No, absolutely not. We are mastering. Failure brings mastery. Every time we fail, we become. Do you know what I mean? So we're even changing our relationship with what it is to be failing. I mean, what is that? Do you know what I mean? There's no such thing. Okay. So that's the death, rebirth, and resurrection, of which the Egyptians knew so much about, right? The Egyptians were just like, yay, I'm born. I can't wait to die. This is so exciting. That's literally what they were like. They just wanted to die. They were like, oh, I can't wait until I get old because I'm going to die. I mean, it's imagine living like that. Like, shit. I'm like, oh my God, I just want to die. So I'm working on that mastery. You know what I mean? But in all seriousness, like, that's how they were. And I've just come back from Avalon, and a lot of my teachings are to do with Avalon because they mirror exactly the same thing. Avalon is about the death, rebirth, and resurrection, because it's very much to do with the Vesica Pisces, which is like that. So you have like the masculine, the feminine, okay, and then in between they deem that as the yoni, that little circle in between, if you could see that, and it's the two circles. So like that's the yoni, that's where creation is born through, right? So it's where one becomes two, okay, becomes three, that bit in the middle, and then 3 becomes 2 becomes 1. So that's the 1 becomes 2 becomes 3, 3 becomes 2 becomes 1. It's just cycles, right? Same as seasons, same as the sun rising, all of the above. And that's why the Essenes and the Egyptians basically celebrated this so much, because all around them, they were reflected back to them about the absolute infinite magic of death, rebirth, and resurrection. And then, ... there was our kind of incarnation where we're like, yeah, I don't really think I feel like that. Don't really feel like, no. don't really resonate the same, does it? Do you know what I mean? But that is kind of what we're getting back to. So in the bigger sense of the word, death, rebirth, and resurrection is a massive, massive subject to get into. I mean, like we could talk about Yeshua climbing on the cross. That's what he was conveying to us. Look, I don't die. I drop the body, but I don't die. I'm still here. You are infinite. I am infinite. Kingdom of heaven is within you. All of that kind of thing, right? So that's what he was portraying to us. Every time you go to sleep at night, you drop the body, you die, you wake up, you're reborn, you resurrect, get out of bed. We do it every single day effortlessly. So why is it with the big stuff, we just go, oh no, I can't do this? Because we think we are not worthy. So this brings us to the forgiveness. I spoke about this yesterday. This is why forgiveness is the last and final key code you will go through to unlock this perceived mystery. Because forgiveness is the one that says to you, do you know what? God, don't sweat the small stuff. Can you open to receive now? Don't sweat the small stuff. You know what I mean? You can't carry 5 presents or packages in one hand. Put both of them out because you deserve it. But as long as you're feeling that you're unworthy, you're going to be stuck in that perpetual cycle of just punishing yourself. I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. That stops the death rebirth cycle, because ultimately it's about receiving. We're so good at giving because we are always in our masculine, but when it comes to receiving, it requires us to be very, very in touch with our divine feminine. That's hard. So if you feel that you are not worthy, or you feel somewhere deep inside that you are, you know what I mean, you can't go out there because you don't deserve, then of course you're not going to receive, which means you're not going to be able to move through the death, rebirth, and resurrection. Now, I go back to my 3 key codes yesterday that I spoke about with the full moon, right? Now, I have, and I'm going to go into detail with this, so get comfortable, right? These are the 3 key codes, and this is what I suggest you start working with to help you unlock these gates, right? Because this is exactly what they are. Before I went to Egypt was back in May. Feels like a lifetime ago now. Egypt is big medicine, right? Even though you may be coming to Egypt on one of my groups, don't get it twisted that I don't go through just as much transformation as you. I have to be stretched and challenged, and I have to transform to be able to hold a bigger space every single year I go out there. That is the responsibility of me holding an Egyptian space, let's call it. So I'm not exempt. I go through it, right? So as we ran up to this particular tour, I was challenged, and I was getting like, oh my God, my fear was kicking in, because shadows come up for me as well. And it's my turn to expand just as much as it's yours, right? right? So now, before Egypt, it was just letting go, letting go. So every time I got triggered by something, or every time I tried to control something, because when you're doing groups in Egypt, you cannot always stick to the plan. Stuff comes in, stuff has to change. And I can be very like, nope, this is what we said we were going to do. It can be quite rigid. So I had to let go. And I thought, I'm not going into this with my rigid self anymore. I'm going to let go. So I just, every time something came in that was like distortion, ruffled my feathers, I'd breathe, I'd say, stop there. And I'd go, I'd expand, letting go. Started to reprogram my system with triggers. So trigger, contraction. No, trigger, expand. And I thought, okay, started to work for me. A lot more energy and frequency. I started to receive. Okay, so that's what I did pre-Egypt. Then, when I went to Avalon, this was shortly after, then I really went into the depths of myself after Egypt and went to the next layer, okay? And then I was shown, right, okay, so you're here, you've got to face your dark parts. There's no distractions, there's no groups to be held, nobody's holding your group, you're holding your own space. It's you, it's you, it's you. You can't run away from yourself. So now all of this stuff come up and I was like, oh my God. And you know, in that moment, it was a case of looking at it and going, acceptance. So that's where I am. I can't change it. I can't get on a plane and fly home because I'm far away from home now. I'm here on my own. There's nobody here to help me in this house. I'm on my own. I'm in this pilgrimage. Am I going to run away and not complete? No, that's not an option. And okay, so what have I got going on here? Acceptance. So I accept myself where I am. I don't like it. This feeling is fucking awful. But I'm going to accept it. And it's okay. It's all right. It's all right because nothing stays the same, right? So then when I got to the end of the pilgrimage, the final key code that I walked into, because I was stammering on the end, like, 99% downloaded, was forgiveness. I had to forgive myself. I'm not going to go into it now, but you get the idea. I had to let go of so much that I didn't think I was good enough, a good enough mother, a good enough this, that, and the other, good enough wife, whatever it might be. I had to just forgive myself and let myself off the hook, man, because it was just like, love every part of yourself. You're doing a flipping good job considering. You're okay, chick. Forgiveness. Yeah, you're right. And I went through that, right? So it was basically letting go, acceptance, and then forgiveness. That assisted me in unblocking my waters, in flowing, right? So I want you to work with those 3 key codes. When you are going through it, maybe journal on this, see where you get stuck, see where can you accept where you're at? And if you can't and you're still tweaking out, you need to go and sit and quietly and go into a vision with your inner child and hold their little hands and say to them, you know what I mean? Like, let's have a conversation and just see what comes up with that. Spend more time, create a bigger space. If you're finding it hard to accept anything going on in your life right now, give yourself more space, give yourself more time, give yourself more love, right? Do you know what I mean? So those are the 3 that I want you to work with to make sure that your waters start flowing. Now, just to finish off with this, because I want to share a story with you, because when I was in Avalon, I'm actually going to write a book about it, because it was 9 days and it felt like I went through 9 gates, 9 dimensions of this, right? I think that was the purpose why I went, for my own healing and obviously to share it with others. And what happened is, when I was in Egypt, right, I first of all, rewind. When I was actually in Avalon, I actually took the well water and I filled it up in the sacred glass bottles and I held on to it until I went to Egypt. And I went to Egypt, and with my group, we did a sacred purification water ceremony. Everybody, even the men and the women, they all took the masculine waters, which was the white spring, and we took the red spring, and we all had a prayer, and we all poured the water in bit by bit. The well water, which is the divine mother, the heart chakra, you know what I mean? The sacred waters of Avalon, we poured it into the Nile, okay? And then that was very powerful because that was merging the waters. And then I took the water from the Nile, I filled these bottles up, and I kept them nice and safe, and I held on to them until I was able to come back to Avalon. And my plan was to put the water of the Nile into the sacred well, the chalice well. And then the infinity symbol of the waters were then woven. I was weaving the waters of Avalon and Egypt together. So it was a whole long process of that, right? weaving the head and the heart, weaving the masculine and the feminine together, weaving Egypt and Avalon together. So I get there, and on day one, I go there and I put I put a little bit of the water into the well, and I was like, I don't want to pour any more out because I'm here for 9 days. I want to make sure it's the perfect day. I'll just put a little bit in. So I put the water back on my bedroom shelf, and I was like, I'll leave it there. Woke up the next day with a furious thumping headache. So bad. I was like, I feel like absolute shit today. This is ridiculous. So I sat there and I was like, I just feel so unwell. And I found myself looking at the water, the Nile water that I'd only put a bit into the well. And then I heard the mothers speak, and they were like, for God's sake, put the water in the well already. What are you waiting for? Why are you procrastinating? And I was thinking, well, I might have a ceremony with somebody. I don't know who I'm going to meet on this journey. Maybe I just hold this water back for the right time. They were like, if not now, when? Which is what Yeshua says. And now is the right time because there's only present moment. Get the water, put your shoes on, go and put it in the well now. So I was like, yes, ma'am. So that's exactly what I did. So I went to the well. I poured the water in, gave my prayers in that moment, done, felt this big sigh, headache gone. So that is a very powerful lesson, a very powerful story that I want to share with you as to what happens to us when we hold our waters back. The water is the divine feminine. The water is the heart. So when we do not flow, or we control, or we pull it back because we're waiting for something better to come along, present moment, let the water flow. That was me holding back the process of my death, rebirth, and resurrection. Let it flow. And then my final thing to share with you before I close on this video is when I did that, the biggest lesson that came through from that was when we interfere, control, procrastinate, hold back, resist in any way, you could equate that to a trigger, and we contract. What we do is we prevent your process, your life, your situation. We prevent it in transforming into something else much better to what it's supposed to be. So even though you're in a shitty situation and you don't want to be in it and you're like, oh my God, this is too much, right? What we do is we try and control it. We try and change it. We try and put out fires, trying to solve a problem. But then what we actually do by that is we pull the energy back and we constrict it. And then what happens is we have our version of events that go on, probably not a great solution, but it will do. We didn't die. But if we let go and let it flow, spirit, your higher self, will bring you to the absolute truth and optimal result, better than it could have ever been. It needs to transform into what it was supposed to be. And that is only magic and amazing, harmony, abundance, bliss, gifts, all of the things. But we think we're doing the right thing by fixing the problem and getting involved, whereas actually what we need to be doing is expanding and letting go. We should not be involved in the outcomes because that's your higher self's jobs and your guides. So that is not being in a harmonious process. That is, like I say, the leaves on the tree being sucked up by the tree because they're going to hold their leaves back because they're not sure whether they want to drop them yet. Because is it autumn yet? I don't know. What should I do? They just naturally do it. Go with the flow. So when you pull it back, you basically hurt yourself. When you pull it back, you are hindering your divine feminine creation codes from flowing. When you pull it back, you are basically enforcing spiritual constipation, even worse, hemorrhoids. And we don't want that. We don't want that. So that is my death, rebirth, and resurrection share for today. And I think that if we can put any of this that I've shared with you in the video into practice, then please do. So with that, I am now gathering speed as I've come back from Avalon, and I'm going to be sharing in the very, very not too distant future. I'm going to be opening up a group. It's a 3-hour workshop. Watch out for this because I'll be announcing it in the next few days. And it's for you guys here on my YouTube. And it's an intimate group. So it's going to be on Zoom. And it's going to be working with Sekhmet and / no doubt, Hathor, because we need to understand the fire and the water. The fire is the death, she is the dark mother, and the water is Hathor, which is birth. So I think in light of it being in the Lion's Gate, I think that for us to bring these teachings forth, because you all hold them within you, you all know them inside of you, and we've just forgotten them, that's all. So now is the time for us to bring these water teachings and these fire teachings through the Sekhmet teachings and the Hathor teachings, and bring ourselves to the forefront and start to what's the word? Inhabit our spaces. Instead of playing small because you're not small, it's time to step forward and meet it halfway rather than cowering in the cave, because we're not doing that anymore. We're not doing that anymore. We're different. You know what I mean? So watch out for that. I'll be announcing the dates very, very soon. And if you feel called to this, I'm really looking forward to working with you. That was a very strong message, that I've got some beautiful connections here on YouTube. And I know some of you, I just can't wait to meet as well. You know what I mean? So it's not going to be in a YouTube live, because I want to be able to interact with you. And that's another thing that I'm really promoting in the future, us actually getting together and being in person. Less online stuff, getting our backs up off the wall. Let's get out there. 2025 is a brand new year. We are preparing for such things. So in light of that, can't wait to meet you. So I'm going to leave it there. But anyway, so much love from me. Thank you so much for tuning in. And I do hope that there are some juicy things in here that can actually help you get the water flowing. Peace.